a treaty with Prime Minister Ramgoolam of Mauritius, which guarantees the full continued UK control of Diego Garcia for the next 99 years and beyond. Mr. Speaker, I pay tribute to the UK's negotiators, to the FCDO and MOD teams who supported them, and to the Mauritian officials who worked for 2.5 years with the last government and this to reach the agreement this afternoon. The Foreign Secretary, my right honourable friend, has laid in the House today the full treaty text and his formal exchange of letters with the Foreign Minister of Mauritius that confirm the agreement and the financial arrangements between our two countries. A bill will be introduced soon. There has been a great deal of misinformation about this treaty, much of it fuelled by the Conservative Party opposite. But the simple truth, Mr. Speaker, is that our national security rests on securing a deal that protects our operational sovereignty of this vital military installation. By signing this treaty on our terms, the Prime Minister has ensured that the UK retains full control of Diego Garcia throughout the next century and beyond. It is a deal struck in the national interest. It is a deal that makes Britons today and generations to come safer and more secure. Mr. Speaker, the importance of Diego Garcia cannot be overstated. Some of the operations on our joint UK-US base are in the public domain. Most, by necessity, are not. But all the work conducted from Diego Garcia plays a crucial role in protecting our nation, our armed forces and our trade routes. Mr. Speaker, Diego Garcia is unique. We do things there that we simply could not do anywhere else. Its airfield allows for strike operations and rapid deployments to the Middle East, to East Africa, to South Asia. Its deep-water port supports missions from nuclear-powered submarines to our carrier strike group. It hosts surveillance stations which disrupt terrorist attacks, protect satellites and provide global intelligence capabilities. And it projects UK-US military power into the Indo-Pacific to reinforce regional stability and security. Mr. Speaker, America is our closest security ally, and continued use of this base is fundamental to maintaining the special strength of that relationship. In fact, Diego Garcia is our nation's most significant contribution to the UK-US security partnership that has kept us safe for nearly 80 years. As I've said, this is a joint military base, and almost every operation conducted from it is done in partnership with the US. This is why the treaty has the full-throated support of the US. Secretary of State Rubio has said this afternoon, this agreement, I quote, secures the long-term, stable and effective operation of the joint US-UK military facility at Diego Garcia, which is critical to regional and global security. President Trump himself has described this as very long-term and very strong. Mr. Speaker, Diego Garcia also strengthens Britain's economic security. Over 1/3 of the world's bulk cargo traffic, 2/3 of global oil shipments are transported through the Indian Ocean. Our constant presence in these waters serves to safeguard trade routes, keeping the price of food and energy for Britons down here at home. Diego Garcia is also the permanent location of critical comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty monitoring equipment, a network that watches every moment of every day for evidence of nuclear testing to hold nuclear and would-be nuclear powers to account. Diego Garcia is one of just 4 locations in the world to operate ground station antennae for the global positioning system, which everyone from astronauts to motorists to our military rely on to navigate. Mr. Speaker, quite simply, the loss of Diego Garcia military base would now be unthinkable. And yet without action without this deal, within weeks we could face losing legal rulings, and within just a few years the base would become inoperable. Some have suggested simply ignoring international legal decisions, but this is not just about international law. This is about the direct impact of law on our ability to control and operate this base. Rulings against us would mean that we could not prevent hostile nations setting up installations around Diego Garcia on the outer islands or carrying out joint exercises near the base. No deal means we could not guarantee the safe berth of our subs, patrol the waters around the base, control the airspace directly above, or protect the integrity of the communications systems. Such developments would deeply damage the security interests of the UK and of our allies. It would be a dereliction of the first duty of government. Agreeing this treaty now on our terms means the UK retains full control over Diego Garcia now and for the next century. We've laid before the House the full treaty and the associated costings. The Conservative front bench will see how we have toughened the terms of the deal they were doing, so it does now guarantee the UK's national interest and national security. At a cost of less than 0.2% of the annual defence budget, we've secured unrestricted access to and use of the base, as well as control over movement of all persons and all goods on the base, and control over all communication and electronic systems. Nothing can be built within a 24 nautical mile buffer zone without our say-so, and we've secured an effective veto on all developments in the Chagos archipelago, and a strict ban will be imposed on foreign security forces operating on the outer islands. All provisions that were not there in the draft agreement that had been negotiated by the party opposite before the election. Mr. Speaker, I just say to the parties opposite, anyone who would abandon this deal would abandon the base. They would weaken the security of the British people, and they would weaken the strength of the British Armed Forces. By signing this deal, the British flag will fly over the Diego Garcia base well into the next century. By signing this deal, the relationship with our closest security ally will be strengthened. By signing this deal, our capacity to deter our adversaries and defend UK interests is secured for generations to come. And as the world becomes more dangerous, Diego Garcia becomes more important. And this government will never compromise on our national security. With this deal, we've made Britain more secure at home and stronger abroad.
Secretary of State James Cockledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I am grateful to the Secretary of State for the advance side of his statement. But before I go into the detail, there are two important points I wish to place on record. First, it was beneath contempt for the Prime Minister in his press conference to state that those who oppose this deal are on the side of Russia and China. I am intensely proud of the role this party has played in supporting Ukraine. I've worn this badge every day, Mr. Speaker. I and many of my colleagues have been sanctioned by Russia and China and passionately believe we must stand up to them. Indeed, that is one of the reasons we oppose this deal. Let's not forget, only last week, Mauritius agreed to deepen maritime cooperation with Russia, and China said this week that it wanted to deepen its strategic partnership with Mauritius and that the country was well placed with its strategic advantages. Mr. Speaker, this is a democracy. If we as elected parliamentarians choose to take a different view on this issue and vote against the deal, that does not make us pro-Russian or pro-Chinese. Voting against this deal does not make us traitors to this country. It makes us patriots. Secondly, the Secretary of State and his defence ministers have said 26 times on the floor of this House that the urgently needed strategic defence review would be delivered by the spring. But he's broken that promise. Here we are, literally the last sitting moment of the spring this year, and instead of the SDR, he's come to the House to announce a total abject surrender of our territory and a fundamental betrayal of the UK's national interest. Mr. Speaker, the government are not surrendering British sovereign territory because of military defeat, nor because of a binding legal verdict, but willfully due to a total failure to take a stand and fight for Britain's interests on the world stage. A complete and utter negotiating failure. Yes, it is true we held talks with the Mauritians in government, but we never signed a deal. Why? Because we fundamentally oppose the idea of spending billions on a surrender tax to lease back land that we currently own freehold. And it is billions. Can the Secretary of State confirm that this deal will cost £1 billion over the next 5 years? When the Prime Minister gave a statement to this House about defence spending recently, he used the cash figure to state how much spending would rise. Can the Secretary of State confirm that on the same basis, this deal will cost UK taxpayers over £10 billion? Can the Secretary of State particularly confirm definitively how much of that cost will come from the MOD budget? Mr. Speaker, on military operations, and you'll be interested, the treaty confirms, and I quote, that we must expeditiously inform Mauritius of any armed attack on a third state directly emanating from the base on Diego Garcia. Can he confirm that that means we would need to tell Mauritius if the base were to be used to launch strikes against Iran or their proxies? What guarantees has he received that Mauritius would not tell potential adversaries?
You're quiet now.
As we all know, the key issue is that the government fears a binding legal judgment. They are following the legal advice to act definitively to our detriment entirely on the basis of hypothetical risk that has not yet materialised and which we could challenge. And this is part of a pattern, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, with the EU Defence Pact, the Secretary of State admitted that he has only secured potential participation in the rearmament fund. But despite no guarantee of hard cash for defence, the government have already given up our sovereign fishing grounds for over a decade. Yesterday, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland refused to explain why this government failed to appeal the legal decision which now threatens our veterans with a new era of lawfare for the crime of serving this nation and keeping us safe all those years ago. And today with Chagos, once again, they've prioritised heeding the most pessimistic legal advice, even though we've exposed the fact that fear of binding threats from the ITU or UNCLOS are overblown. As the Honourable Member for Crawley, Labour backbencher, said earlier, we're all getting real tired of this, the courts have settled it line of argument. It's not so much a case of no surrender, Mr. Speaker, as yes surrender every single time. Always listening to the lawyers instead of our national interest, even if that means surrendering our veterans, surrendering our fishing grounds and surrendering the Chagos Islands. May I suggest they change the lyrics of their Labour Party song, because we all know they'll keep the white flag flying here.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Mr Gamble, you're not being helpful to your cause. It is the worst day to be thrown out. So please, I want to hear no more from you. It's continuous. Secretary of State.
Expecting to hear the SDR like all of us instead, Mr. Speaker, given their multiple promises. So finally, Mr. Speaker, the Chagosian community have been shamefully sidelined by this government from start to finish, with only tick-box engagement by junior ministers. Isn't it the case that the treaty offers no protection for the Chagosians whatsoever? Mr. Speaker, when Labour negotiates, Britain loses. The government should not be surrendering strategically vital sovereign territory, especially when we face such threats, and they certainly shouldn't be paying billions for the privilege. We would abandon this deal. We would never abandon the Chagos Islands. This is a bad deal for Britain, and we will do everything possible to oppose it.
Secretary of State for Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I regret the tone that the honourable gentleman has struck this afternoon. The Prime Minister was making a simple point. He was making a simple point that if the base goes, the countries that benefit, the countries that want to see the base go and the deal fail, are China, Russia and Iran. And quite simply, he was asking, whose side of the argument are you on? Frankly, if you don't back the deal, you don't back the date, you don't back the base.
Order. I'll decide what's shameful and what's not. I'm going to say no once and for all. Mr. Cartledge, you've been pushing and pushing for quite a while. Motions are running high, but I don't want a continuous barracking at that level of noise coming from you. You should be setting a very good example of the Shadow Secretary of State. Keeping calm, being effective, not bawling. Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quite simply, if you don't back the deal, you can't back the base. There is no viable alternative option than this deal. The senior military figure that was part of the treaty signing this afternoon, General Jim Hockenhull, confirmed that publicly. The Honourable Gentleman knows this. He was a Defence Minister until the last election. He knows that was the advice that he and his previous government were given. And, Mr. Speaker, look, even the spokesperson for his leader admitted in February that a deal is needed. Reported in Playbook, said a spokesperson for Badenoch insisted she understands negotiations over the islands are needed due to the international legal position. That is the job that we have done. Look, they conceded the principle that negotiation was necessary. They conceded the principle that a deal was required to safeguard the long-term protection and control of this base. They conducted 11 rounds of negotiation before the last election. They failed. It talks about part of a pattern. They failed to deliver a trade deal with India. We did it. They failed to deliver a trade deal with the US. We did it. They failed to safeguard Diego Garcia, and we have done it. We picked up those negotiations, we strengthened the defence protections for the UK, and we did the deal today. Mr. Speaker, he asked me about the money, quite simply, and once again, he wasn't just a Defence Minister, he was a Treasury Minister before the last election, Exchequer Secretary. In fact, when the negotiations first kicked off, he knows that the government actuary tells us that the full accounting cost of this deal over the full 99 years is £3.4 billion. That's the figure reported and laid before the House today. He will know that there is a long-established method used under our government, his government and the previous government for accounting for long-term projects. Projects like this base, like the nuclear commissioning programme, like big infrastructure projects, like pensions liabilities as well. The fact for me, as Defence Secretary, is that the cost of this deal is less than 0.2% of the annual defence budget. This is an essential deal for our national security, and it's one that will ensure that Britain is better equipped to face down the rising threats that we face. And our armed forces are stronger, our armed forces are safer because of this deal done today. Mr. Speaker, he asked me about the Chagosians. I just would say to him, we've been concerned since we were elected just 10 months ago to restore good communication, better relations with the wide range of Chagosian groups. My honourable friend, the Foreign Minister, has met them regularly. My right honourable friend and the Foreign Minister met them this morning. The negotiations, however, were between the Mauritian government and the UK government, just like with him. But we've worked in this deal to ensure that the agreement does reflect the importance that Chagosians attach to the islands. And so we will finance a new £40 million trust fund for Mauritius to support the Chagosian community. And finally, can I conclude where I started and just say to the honourable gentleman, we've worked together on a cross-party basis on Ukraine. We have offered him and his leader security briefings on any of the big issues that we face. just say to him, this deal is in the national security interest. It's why in opposition we backed his government when it set out to try and negotiate that deal, just as we backed in opposition his government when he led the UK's support for Ukraine. And I hope when he looks at the treaty, when he considers that there was no alternative, when he recognises how this is a tougher deal, better for our base, better for our forces, better to protect our British people in this country, I hope he will back it.
Yeah. Peter Lamb. Mr. Speaker, in the 60s and 70s, Labour and Conservative governments removed the Chagosian people from their islands in the interest of national security. In response to written questions, the Foreign Office has confirmed that many certainties which would be required for Chagosians to return to the islands have not been secured as a part of this deal, once more banning them in the name of national security. Can I ask what I should tell my Chagosian constituents when they ask the moral basis upon which the UK is once again ignoring their right to self-determination while we fight for it in Ukraine for the Ukrainians? And on what basis can members of British overseas territories feel any certainty that they will retain possession of their islands in the event that our national security interests are suddenly piqued?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have known my honourable friend for a long time, and I've known that he has been a really loud and strong voice for Chagosians in this country. I hope he will recognise first that this has been a negotiation that the British government has conducted with the Mauritian government. I hope he will recognise also and respect the fact that my right honourable friend and my honourable friend from the Foreign Office have tried to set a new tone in relationships and communication with the range of Chagosian groups that are in this country. And I hope he will also recognise that within that range of Chagosian groups are a range of Chagosian views, some of whom do support this deal, see the need for it, and I trust that he will be strong in his advocacy of the use of this trust fund and the programmes that we will help put in place to help the Chagosian people.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson James Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Liberal Democrats support the UK complying with international law, but the process for agreeing this deal has been more than a little bit bumpy. While the Conservatives have feigned anger bordering on hysteria at times, despite it being their Foreign Secretary who first signalled the UK's intention to secure an agreement, the government has failed consistently to provide any clarity on the progress of the deal. We don't need a running commentary. We do need to know that public money is being used wisely, though. It was also clear that the government was prepared to give Donald Trump the ultimate veto on any agreement, without regard for the priorities of Chagosians themselves. So as the deal has now been reached, can the Minister confirm what issues Chagosians raised during their meetings with ministers and how the government has responded to ensure their voices and their issues have been addressed in this deal? In attempting yesterday to humiliate South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, President Trump proved once again his instincts as an unreliable and unpredictable bully. Having now confirmed this deal on a shared UK-US asset, how confident is the Minister that Diego Garcia won't be used by this White House to advance foreign policy objectives that we deem contrary to our principles and interests? Hard-working families around the country will rightly be questioning why the government is willing, reportedly, to negotiate such significant sums of payments to Mauritius at a time when PIP payments are being severely scaled back. So will the Minister put on record today the proposed schedule of payments as they relate to the deal and when it's expected the schedule will commence? As the government has previously confirmed, the treaty must come before the House for scrutiny, especially given its importance to our national security and implications for the Exchequer. I hope this sets a valuable precedent that could be applied to, for instance, trade deals in future. So can the Minister confirm when this House will have an opportunity to scrutinise the proposed deal, as well as a chance to vote on its ratification? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, the answer to his question is that this House, from this point, has the full opportunity to scrutinise this deal, which is why my right honourable friend has placed the full text of the treaty in this House, together with the financial arrangements. He says that the negotiators have been doing their negotiations without giving a running commentary. He says also he doesn't want a running commentary because he respects the fact that in any negotiations there has to be that private space where those discussions can take place. I've said consistently that when the treaty is ready and put before the House, the full financial information would be alongside it. That has happened today. The scrutiny, the proper scrutiny of this House begins today, and when the bill is published soon, he'll be able to add that to it. On the question of the Chagosians, we will fund the £40 million so the Mauritians can set up a new trust fund for the Chagosian communities. And just to say on the US, look, this is a treaty that has been negotiated, that has been signed today between our Prime Minister and the Mauritian Prime Minister. It secures a vital defence and intelligence base for Britain. But as I said in my statement, almost everything that we do on this base is jointly with the US. So of course we've kept them informed, of course we've consulted them. At no point have they had a veto. This is our deal, it's our decision. I bring it to the House this afternoon because this is in the best national interest and our best security interest too.
Sorry. Mr. Mayor, what did you have to comment to say? Shaking your head and making comments. And certainly my example when I'm looking to keep you calm, I don't need the back chat. There's another one that's been going on for a while. Alex Ballinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The party opposite started negotiations on handing over the Chagos Islands because they understood the national security implications of not doing a deal. Indeed, they did 11 rounds of negotiations on this deal. And now, one of our closest security partners, the Americans, the Canadians, the Australians and the New Zealanders, all welcoming this deal. Why are they playing politics with our national security?
Exactly.
Mr. Speaker, I entirely agree with my honourable friend. He makes a very powerful point. He makes it in a very judicious way. And I would say to the Shadow Defence Secretary, he could learn a bit from our honourable friend.
Sir James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister, in his extensive press conference prior to the Secretary of State for Defence coming to the House, and then the Secretary of State for Defence have said on numerous occasions that this deal is the only way of protecting the military operations on Diego Garcia. When I was Foreign Secretary, I did not see anything which made me agree that this is the only way of protecting the military operations on that base. He suggested in his speech to the House that a judgment could come within weeks that would undermine the operations of the base. From which binding legal authority does he fear that jurisdiction may come? Because we know it's not the ITU, we know it's not the ICJ, so who would he believe would prevent us from military operations on that island?
Mr. Speaker, the right honourable gentleman was a formidable figure and a very senior figure in the previous government. He was in the post of Foreign Secretary during the period when there were negotiations on this deal. By entering into the negotiations, his government accepted and conceded the principle that a negotiated deal was the way to secure the full operational sovereignty of this base for the long term. Now, I just say to him, he may well not have been satisfied with the deal that his own people could have negotiated at the time, because when we picked up the negotiations, Mr. Speaker, there was no agreement on an effective UK veto across the archipelago, which we have now. There was no buffer zone accepted in the agreement, which there is now. There was no agreement in the text, not just for 99 years, but the extra 40 years of first option that we've got in here. And there was also not an agreement for Mauritius to take on responsibility for any migrants. And there is now. So I just say to the right honourable gentleman, I hope he looks at the new text of the treaty, and I hope he will back it when it comes before the House.
Amanda Mott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to welcome this agreement, an agreement that safeguards a vital national security asset and cements the United Kingdom role at the heart of the global defence cooperation. Let's be clear. This treaty is about protecting Britain's ability to defend itself and its allies. Diego Garcia is not just a piece of land in the Indian Ocean, it is the backbone of our joint operations with the United States and a linchpin of the UK's ability to protect power, deter threats and ensure security in an increasing unstable world. All of our closest allies, the US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, India, support this deal. NATO supports this deal because they understand what Diego Garcia represents, unmatched strategic certainty. Will the Minister please give us more information around how we were protecting around the islands? Thank you.
My honourable friend is absolutely right. Look, our close allies take the close interest and they can see that in this treaty is the best way of securing what, for the UK and the US and also for them, is a vital base on which we can help both project military power but reinforce regional security. My honourable friend will see the 24-mile nautical buffer zone, an exclusion zone, if you like, where it allows us to control the seas and control the air. We wouldn't be able to do that increasingly without the deal. She'll see that sweep and an effective veto on any developments across the archipelago to ranges of at least 100 nautical miles. And she will see the value of a deal which guarantees our full operational sovereignty and therefore prevents any undermining of our ability to use the electromagnetic spectrum, which, as I said in my statement, is so crucial to the unique capabilities that this base and its operations offer to this country and to the United States.
Julian Lewis.
When a former Foreign Secretary asks a sitting Defence Secretary for a direct answer as to which court would be able to make a binding judgment against us on this matter, he's entitled to a direct answer. So will the Secretary of State now give that direct answer?
Mr. Speaker, there's a range of international legal challenges and rulings against us. The most proximate, the most potentially serious is the Tribunal of the International Convention of the Sea.
And the lease.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend has just set out how this deal, which is essential for our national security, will cost less than 0.25% of our national defence budget. So can he also confirm that this deal costs far less than other base deals like France's with Djibouti, yet it offers vastly superior strategic scale and value?
I can indeed, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend is right. For me as Defence Minister, this deal will cost less than 0.2% of the defence budget. It compares very favourably with the 85 million euros the French pay for their Djibouti base, which, by the way, is right next to a Chinese base, which, by the way, unlike Diego Garcia, which is 15 times bigger than that French base in Djibouti, also has this exclusion zone around it, which helps protect our operations and protects the intelligence services that we've got there. So my right honourable friend is right. This is a good investment for the future national security of this country.
Al Pinkt, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning I was at the High Court to listen to the judgment, and I was with a very large group of Chagosians who told me that they feel betrayed. And they also feel that the United Kingdom is acting in exactly the same high-handed, colonial-like manner that led to their dislocation and displacement from the islands in the 1960s. When this deal comes back to this House for us to vote, can the front bench assure us all that we are not going to be asked to vote for a new round of colonial practice that is further going to disadvantage Chagosians?
Mr. Speaker, of course not. And look, we deeply regret the way that the Chagosians were removed from the islands. We've expressed that sentiment as a new government since July. We've made provisions in this treaty to support the Chagosian communities. But he will recognise there's such a wide range of views within the Chagosian communities and groups. Some of them see the value of this deal, some of them support this deal, and the important fact for us is that that legal challenge in the High Court today, in a sense, demonstrates some of the legal difficulties that will continue to bedevil the operation of this base without the deal that our Prime Minister has signed today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I commend my honourable friend for explaining in as much detail as is able on the floor of the House the detail of why he believes this is a necessary act. And I trust my right honourable friend to have at heart the security of the nation as his top priority. However, there are elements to this that cannot be talked about, even at the point where this House may vote on the treaty. And there is only one member of this House that has access to all areas of government spending. That is the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, the Honourable Member for Cotswolds. Does my right honourable friend agree that there are areas that do need deeper scrutiny, and will he support our plans that we're been having discussions about having a sensitive scrutiny committee that can examine issues, including this one?
Well, my right honourable friend knows that I've had discussions with her and the right honourable gentleman for Cotswolds about this question of the capability of this House of Commons to be able to scrutinise and hold to account the government of whatever party in areas of necessarily highly secret and confidential activity. She knows that I have a different view about how to deal with that challenge, but dealing with that challenge we must.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
I'm very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. The Minister has cited UNCLOS under pressure from my right honourable friends as the reason for this expensive cave-in. Well, I'm familiar with UNCLOS, and although I'm a layman and so is the Minister, could he explain in lay terms which parts of UNCLOS are responsible for what has happened? Because it isn't clear to me, and it won't be clear to my constituents and to his, who will be paying the bill for this.
Mr. Speaker, the judgments of any international tribunal or court do not necessarily just apply to the UK. They are taken by other agencies, other organisations, other nations, and in particular, as my right honourable friend the Prime Minister spelt out this afternoon, if there is uncertainty or a binding finding against the UK about the sovereignty of Diego Garcia, then our ability to protect, in particular, and most immediately, the electromagnetic spectrum on which our sensors, our radars, our communications, our intelligence functions depend, is compromised. That's the security assessment, that's the military view. That is why we've taken the step and recognise that the best and only way of safeguarding the operational sovereignty, the total control and protection of the Diego Garcia Island base for the future is the deal that we've struck this afternoon.
Josh Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am alarmed by the passion for the Chagos Islands from the members opposite, having on a number of occasions, if you'd let me finish, having on a number of occasions intervened and asked members opposite to name the Chagos Islands when they've been unable to tell me that it was Diego Garcia, Palos, Peros, the Solomon Islands and the Egmont Islands. Similarly, I don't share your passion, I'm sorry. Similarly, the Leader of the Opposition first tweeted about the Chagos Islands in October 2024. That was 5 years after the ICJ ruling and 2 years after negotiations started. So does my honourable friend agree with me that perhaps this newfound passion for the Chagos Islands owes more to political opportunism than it does any deeply held conviction opposite?
Mr. Speaker, I do indeed, and I have to say I'm relieved my honourable friend hasn't asked me to name all 50-plus islands in the archipelago this afternoon.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Mauritians have never, ever owned the Chagos Islands. And when they gained independence from the United Kingdom in the 1960s, the UK paid them millions of pounds to cede any future claims over the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. The Defence Secretary has confirmed the strategic importance of the Chagos Islands. We all agree on that. But the truth is this is the worst ever deal in history by this country. We are paying over 100 years, with inflation, over £40 billion to give away a strategically important security asset. And the truth is, Mr. Speaker, I'm confirming that when Reform win the next general election, we will rip up this deal and tear it up and stop all future payments. It's a disgrace.
Mr. Speaker, that's total rubbish, not just his figures, but also his assertion. Look, our closest ally that's taken the closest look at the deal that we have negotiated sees this as the way that we can secure the joint operations, the control of this base. We can jointly guarantee it through this deal for the next century and beyond. And in terms of the cost, look, we've gone over the cost. It's less than 0.2% of the defence budget. For this we get the security of being able to continue operating an intelligence and defence base, doing activities and operations that we simply couldn't do anywhere else. This is a good investment for Britain. Britain is safer today because of the deal that we've struck.
Louise Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The party opposite had a terrible record on defence with abject failure after abject failure, and I think we've seen from this afternoon that they haven't learnt from those lessons. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that in backing this deal with support both from the US, from NATO, from Five Eyes, some of our biggest allies in the Indo-Pacific region, India and Australia, that this is a party that cares seriously about national security, will put the national interest first, and unlike the parties opposite, will not make meaningless gestures to put their own party first?
I will indeed, Mr. Speaker. Look, this is a base that has saved British lives for over 50 years. It's saved the lives of people at home in this country, because it's been the launch pad against which we've defeated terrorist attacks. It's been the launch pad also for protecting and saving the lives of British forces when they've been deployed to war zones around the world. This is a deal that we've signed today that will mean we can continue to exercise the full control necessary to continue to do this for the next century to come.
Sir Bernard.
Mr. Speaker, can I, in all candour, suggest to the government that having now introduced this new element, the International Convention on the Law of the Sea, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and its associated tribunal, I presume the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, as the decisive factor that might have created a binding ruling, that it really is incumbent upon the government to set out in a statement exactly how this would have affected the electromagnetic spectrum or our ability to use it in Diego Garcia. Oh, right, well, the Foreign Secretary might just calm down for a minute. I just want a proper explanation, because I make this forecast to cut personal independence payments, to cut winter fuel allowances, to pay for something that was already British sovereign territory, billions of pounds. How is he going to explain that on the doorstep to all their voters? And I promise you, we will make sure that they never hear the end of it.
Well, the right honourable gentleman might just like to remember and make the comparison that the total cost over 99 years of the deal that we've struck to protect this space and the British control over it is less than the value of the PPE that was unusable and that was burnt because the government had bought it in the first year of the COVID pandemic.
Gordon McKee.
The US supports this deal. NATO supports this deal. India supports this deal. So does the Minister share my surprise that members opposite seem so intent on ignoring our allies?
My honourable friend makes a very powerful point, very succinctly, and I hope this House has heard it, and I hope the other party opposite listens to it.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Gentleman knows the regard I have for him and indeed for the Foreign Secretary. He knows too of my interest and involvement in national security matters. There's no debate across this House about the salience of Diego Garcia. It's absolutely critical to our national interest. The debate is about the legal advice. So will he, in the interests of scrutiny, provide, where it doesn't compromise national security matters, all of the information and advice given to him and previous ministers on the subject of this legal advice? We suspect that that advice could have been challenged, and I suspect that many previous holders of his office and others would have received similar, if not the same legal advice, and resisted it.
Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Gentleman, this House will have plenty of an opportunity to test and debate these issues, but he might start by asking those of his right honourable friends who were in government at the time that started negotiations, that judged at the time negotiations and a deal was necessary to safeguard the future of Diego Garcia and the full operational control of the base.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also like to commend the Secretary of State for his calm and measured approach in how we're approaching this very serious topic. Will the Minister expand on the safeguards of this deal, particularly the 24-mile nautical exclusion or buffer zone and the ban on foreign military presence, which guarantee full UK command of the base? And I'd like to remind some of my colleagues opposite that it's important to lead and not follow, and not to use sensible, measured language, not charged mistruths. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, so the provisions of the treaty, as my honourable friend will see from the full text, guarantee the power of the UK, the right of the UK in the 24 nautical mile zone immediately around the islands and in the airspace above to patrol and control that airspace in a way that would be undermined if we saw a succession of legal judgments that started to establish a Mauritian claim to sovereignty. That would undermine and weaken our ability to conduct those patrols, control the skies and protect the base.
Mr. Speaker, under this deal we will be paying billions of pounds for the privilege of having our own territory taken away from us. And the Minister talks about the threat to the base as if Mauritius, a country with no navy, is about to steam in or pick a fight with the United States. This is implausible. And the whole House will have heard him trying to dodge the question from the former Foreign Secretary, and on being pressed, scrambling around to come up with a legal argument and coming up with something totally novel and hazy. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, that our constituents are going to be paying billions so that the Prime Minister can bask in the warm glow of approval from his fellow human rights lawyers.
Rubbish, absolute rubbish. It's £3.4 billion over 99 years. It's less than 0.2% of the annual defence budget. This is a good investment for a unique capability that has played an essential part in defeating terrorism, breaking up terrorist groups, for deploying British forces, in protecting our trade routes, and in monitoring the nuclear threats around the globe. This is an essential base. We run it jointly with the US. The US is full square behind us, and I hope his party will also be the same.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for setting out very clearly why this is the right thing to do for the UK. Could he perhaps share with us any threat assessments that he has indicating that without guaranteed, and this is the key word, guaranteed access to Diego Garcia, China and other countries could attempt to expand their regional military presence, building installations close to the base?
Of course, China wants to try and move in on the Chagos archipelago. Of course, it wants to try and set up operations or any activities that would allow it to interfere or to monitor what we do from this base. This deal helps protect the base. It helps prevent that happening.
Jerome May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I mean it this time. So the Secretary of State claims the Secretary of State claims he has asserted from the dispatch box that it is a risk of an unclossed judgment that is requiring this capitulation of sovereignty. So can he answer this specific question? Is he aware of a single case that is live in UNCLOS at the moment that is against the United Kingdom?
Mr. Speaker, within a few weeks, we expect rulings that will start to weaken our ability to control and maintain our full operational sovereignty over Diego Garcia. Within just a few years, we expect that to be at a point in which it compromises our ability to continue the operations that are so essential to protecting people at home here and also protecting our forces when they deploy around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. National security decisions and debate should be led by fact and not political point scoring, as we've seen today, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree that had the Conservative performed some sort of miracle and stayed in government at the next election, they too would have signed this deal and we would have supported that in the interest of national security?
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to speak for that party opposite, but they clearly were trying to negotiate a deal. They'd had 11 rounds of negotiation. Any government elected in June would have been faced with the challenge of how to secure this base for the long term. It was clear that that was their direction. It was clear that they conceded that principle in government. I regret the fact that they are not consistent in pursuing that principle, recognising the way that we have strengthened the deal and done the deal that they were unable to secure.
James McMillan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to advise the Minister that I'm concerned about the influence of foreign nations levied through the criminal courts. And if it's not too vague, I'd like to just read a very brief quote, which is, "A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they know they will never sit. Given this land was always going to be ours, and now it's only will be ours for 99 more years. In a century, who will benefit from that shade?"
Mr. Speaker, the British people and British forces will benefit from that shade. They will continue to benefit from that shade beyond the 99 years if we choose as a nation at that point to exercise our first refusal to extend this deal for another 40 years. That was a provision that was not in the deal that they negotiated. It's a provision that extends our ability to control this space for the long term for our national security.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for his statement. As the Prime Minister confirmed earlier today, the cost of this deal is slightly less than the average annual cost of just one aircraft carrier without the aircraft. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that this is a price well worth paying to ensure our country's safety and security?
It is, Madam Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is definitely a good investment for this country. It helps protect our security at home. It helps strengthen our forces abroad. It helps reinforce that very special security relationship that we have with our closest ally, the United States.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker, and I hope the Defence Secretary is fully across the detail here. Annex 1, paragraph 3, subpara C, states that Mauritius and the United Kingdom shall jointly decide upon the management and use of the electromagnetic spectrum in the Chagos archipelago beyond Diego Garcia. Given Diego Garcia should be represented by Mauritius at the International Telecommunication Union, as per letter number 1 of the 22nd of May 2025, how will control and management of the electromagnetic spectrum be reflected as per Annex 1, paragraph 1, subpara B, clause 4? And given the threat posed by Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific and the level of Chinese development finance investment in Mauritius, what assessment has the government made of future lack of cooperation from Mauritius on access to said electromagnetic spectrum?
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to have a word with my right honourable friend, the Chief Whip, and just let him know that the honourable gentleman has made an early bid for committee membership.
Regular pointer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that it's telling that one of the many Tory Prime Ministers we had over the 14 years in government, the member for Richmond, said in 2023 that he wanted to conclude a deal soon? So is it not the case the bluster and red faces we've seen from the party opposite today is nothing more than the worst type of political hypocrisy?
Absolutely. I pay tribute to my honourable friend. He's got a quote that I've not managed to get, and I'll ask him to pass it on to me, because he makes a very powerful point to this House and to the party opposite, a number of whom served under the right honourable gentleman who was Prime Minister at the time.
Dr. Ilshastri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The government's position appears to be predicated on a hypothetical judgment to a hypothetical claim. In this hypothetical scenario, why wouldn't the government simply appeal?
The operations that... Look, the jeopardy and the uncertainty over this base is putting at risk security operations that are essential to us and our allies. We are not prepared to take that risk with national security. We've done a deal in order to secure for the long term the guaranteed full operational continuing control of Diego Garcia and that military base.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. America backs the deal. Canada backs the deal. Australia backs the deal. New Zealand backs the deal. Our relationship with the Five Eyes is our most crucial intelligence relationship. So does he agree with me that it will be a dereliction of duty to our country and to those four countries to have failed to do this deal?
Well said, my honourable friend. And also I'd add India supports this deal. Those countries that are our staunchest allies are our strongest supporters on this deal. Those countries that are adversaries, that do us harm, that want themselves to be able to move in to this part of the world and the archipelago, don't want the base, don't want the deal. And there is a question. There is a question. Whose side of the argument are you on?
Dr. Luke Evans.
United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I respect the expertise for the Defence Secretary, so I hope he could help me here, because the ICJ said it was a non-binding treaty, non-binding decision. The International Tribunal Law of the Sea is the court he is worried about. Why, to the country, they will wonder, why would he not challenge that in the court, stand by that and have that process to see what it would look like? And if that is the case, he was worried he was going to lose, would he publish the documentation as to why he was given that advice, why he would lose, so that the country can understand why he's not making that challenge? Because if he failed that challenge, he could appeal as well. To the public, it does look like we are just giving into the deal without even using the courts that we could legally use ourselves.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Opposition Chief Whip's got a second volunteer for the committee stage of his legislation. Look, there's an accumulation of legal challenges. There's a serious risk of legal rulings. This is not just a matter of international law. It is the direct impact on the operations of this essential base to our national security. The risk this poses puts the future operation of the base in jeopardy, and no responsible government could stand by and simply say, we cannot act. No action is no option, and that is why we struck the deal and signed the treaty today.
Right, that completes the statement. We now come to a petition. Petition, Caroline Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to present a petition on behalf of the residents of South Devon concerning the proposed temporary co-location of the Torbay and South Devon NHS Foundation Trust's out-of-hours primary percutaneous coronary intervention (PPCI) services at the Royal Devon and Exeter Hospital. This change would significantly increase travel times for patients suffering life-threatening cardiac emergencies, causing deep concern in the community. Many constituents have contacted me fearing delays to urgent care. Quick access to treatment is critical in these situations, and this proposal could endanger lives by reducing access. The petitioners therefore request that the House of Commons urges the Government to ensure NHS Devon reconsider the proposed co-location and to ensure that all PPCI services, including out-of-hours services, remain accessible within the local area. And the petitioners remain accepted.
What are we up to now? I know that, but it's not for me to move.
Petition, location of the Torbay and South Devon NHS out-of-hours primary percutaneous coronary intervention services.
Okay. Enjoy the research.
Thank you. Thank you. I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is, this House do now adjourn. Marcus Campbell Cephas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a pleasure and a privilege to secure the last adjournment debate before recess, especially on an issue that I know is of great importance to my constituents, Cumbria and the wider region. But I start with an apology to the Minister. Recess is starting, half our colleagues have already set off to their constituencies, and I've dragged her in for the graveyard shift. I'm sorry, but it's appreciated. We are rapidly approaching completion of the spending review, and having spent months communicating with officials in National Highways, and along with my honourable friend, the member for Bishop Auckland, with ministers in the Department for Transport and the Treasury, I really view this as my last chance to help get the project over the line. In preparation for what is my first adjournment debate, I noted the last time a politician with my surname spoke in a pre-recess adjournment debate 24 years ago, when the then Speaker, perhaps setting an unusual precedent, joined in the debate. I'm sure if Mr. Speaker wanted to say some supportive words, my constituents in Penrith and Solway would be very pleased, although I admit the extent to which Speaker Martin stuck to the topic of the debate in 2001 is debatable. The A66 Northern Transpennine project in the north of is the north of England's largest road project, and at a cost of £1.5 billion, it should come as no surprise to anyone that the new government is reviewing the business case. But I'll be setting out the importance of the project for my constituents and why the project, in my view, must go ahead. I know the Minister will not be pre-announcing from the dispatch box the outcome of the spending review, but I hope that the Minister will confirm that the A66 project is in the running and has not been shelved, as was claimed by a Conservative politician on BBC television last week. That politician oversaw and left a council on the brink of bankruptcy, and the irony of them now pontificating on the nation's finances is quite frankly bizarre. I take the financial position inherited from the last government very seriously, and I applaud the government's mission of securing sustained growth. The important thing for those of us in the rural north is that we see our fair share of this growth and the investment that enables it. The last decade has given us reasons to worry. The IPPR North produced figures showing that between 2010 and 2020, the North missed out on £86 billion in transport investment when compared to London. A lost decade that only leaves us weaker at a time when we need growth. Last year, the same think tank calculated that total public spending per person on transport projects in 23-24 was £1,321 per person in London, more than double the £615 per person spent on the North. So I welcome the government's renewed focus on the North and the recent announcements of higher investment in the North of England this year as part of Labour's plan for change. Indeed, the Prime Minister has indicated the government will be spending more than double the money per head on local transport in the North than in the South this year. But I can still remember the last government's integrated rail plan for the North that made not one mention of Cumbria. Mr. Speaker, I see this project as a key enabler for delivering growth in my region. The project will see the upgrade of approximately 50 miles of the A66 between the M6 at Penrith and the A1M at Scotch Corner, converting single carriageway sections into dual carriageways and improving countless junctions along the route. I feel obliged to offer some expectation management to my constituents. Not 1 mile of the road will be dualled in the Penrith and Solway constituency. The major benefits for the residents of Penrith will be the upgrades to the M6 junction 40 and the Kempley roundabout. I can't count the number of times I've sat in traffic on those junctions alongside local residents fighting through the commercial and tourist traffic, just trying to go about their daily business. The tourists stuck just at the beginning or end of their holiday in the Lake District National Park or North Pennines. The HGVs anxiously thinking about their tachographs, or maybe they're thinking about dinner and getting home to their families, as I'm sure some of you are now. Some are simply travelling down the M6, possibly not even conscious that a bottleneck on an adjacent A road is the cause of the delayed journey. The planned underpass just outside Penrith will separate the east-west A66 traffic from the north-south flow, which will reduce traffic volumes by 55% and provide major benefits for local people, including pedestrians and cyclists, improving access to Penrith itself and the facilities and businesses around the roundabout. It will reduce delays and queues at the M6 Junction 40 and will ensure a much better start to the holiday for visitors, whether they're travelling by car or taking advantage of the local active travel network. There'll be environmental benefits and economic benefits, and we would feel as if the government had prioritised the rural north, so often neglected by central government. This project will improve connections between Cumbria, North Yorkshire, the Tees Valley, Tyne and Wear and beyond. It is the most direct route between the central belt of Scotland and the eastern side of England. It connects cities like Glasgow and Edinburgh with Leeds, Sheffield and Norwich, if those journeys are made by road. Safety has been a huge concern along the route, and there have been a number of avoidable deaths over the last few years. The junctions of particular concern are in Richmond and North Allerton and the Westmoreland and Lonsdale constituencies, and I know the honourable members representing those areas have raised their concerns with ministers. But the wider route is regularly used by my constituents, and I'm acutely aware of the risks that stretches of this road present. Adjacent to the Kempley roundabout is the Cumbria Fire and Police Headquarters, with operational elements at both. Currently in the summer, it can take 45 minutes for non-emergency vehicles to travel 100 metres. For our emergency services, this congestion presents a significant issue, and I know Dave Allen, Cumbria's Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, fully supports the project to improve emergency vehicle access, but also to make the A66 safer. After my election in July, I met with National Highways to discuss the scheme, knowing that this government faced difficult choices. I wanted reassurance that the business case was up to date and would withstand scrutiny. The primary economic benefits come from travel time savings that will be realised by business users. The A66 is an important route for freight traffic, with HGVs comprising a quarter of the vehicles on the route. The fact that this is more than double the national average highlights the importance of the route for business. The regular closures on the existing route present significant disruption to business transactions, with many of my constituency businesses directly affected. During discussions with National Highways, it became apparent that existing Treasury Green Book guidance prevents a distinction being made in the economic case between general road users and business vehicles. This means the cost-benefit ratio does not distinguish between an individual making a social trip in a car and a HGV delivering vital components to a factory. For a road project so important to business, this is a disaster. I understand new guidance is on the way, but not in time for it to be used to appraise this project in this spending review. This limits the ability for the economic case to tell the true story, so efforts have been put in to reflect this within the strategic case. But this still leaves me uncomfortable that the true benefits of the scheme are not fully articulated. As frustrated as I am, Mr. Speaker, as it stands, the economic case still predicts hundreds of millions of pounds of benefits, primarily through cost efficiency and saving to business, and even additional tax revenue through employment. Mr. Speaker, the project is vital for Cumbria. It will reduce road traffic accidents and deaths on the single carriage section of the route. It will improve strategic regional and national connectivity, particularly for hauliers. Heavy goods vehicles, which account for a quarter of all traffic on the road, double the national average. It will reduce delays and queues during busy periods and improve the performance of key junctions such as the A66 junction and the M6 junction 40. It might even occasionally stop me missing the train. I appeal to ministers, support this project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Right, let us come to Minister Greenwood, even though I've been tempted to say, let's hope it's another 22 years before we discuss this again with the Campbell Savers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I begin by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Penrith and Solway, on securing today's debate on the A66 North Transpennine project, and I thank him for the powerful arguments that he made. It's been some time since I travelled on the A66, which tells me it's time for a trip to the Lake District sometime soon, although I will of course be rather wary now about how much time to allow for that journey. He has been an incredibly determined campaigner for this project, which runs through part of his constituency. As he acknowledged, we've already met to discuss the importance of the project to the region and indeed its wider national significance, and he's written to me to reiterate its value to business users, including freight, and highlighted the need to address safety concerns, which I take very seriously, as does the Secretary of State. Now, whilst the chamber is rather empty this evening, I am pleased to take the opportunity to thank other honourable and right honourable members with constituencies along the route, including my honourable friends for Bishop Auckland and Carlisle, for their correspondence and for our meetings to discuss their aspirations for the A66. I can assure my honourable friend and others that they have convinced ministers of the overwhelming local support for this important project. Rebuilding Britain means modernising our transport infrastructure. This government will maintain and renew our road network to ensure it serves all users, remains safe and tackles congestion. However, as my honourable friend acknowledged, the financial inheritance this government has received is extremely challenging. Communities up and down the country have been given hope for new transport infrastructure with no plans and no funds to deliver them. We will not repeat that mistake. This government will rebuild our economic foundations whilst restoring transparency and public trust. That is why, on the 30th of July 2024, the Chancellor of the Exchequer announced a multi-year spending review. But let me be absolutely clear. The A66 project is being considered as part of the second phase, which will conclude on the 11th of June. A decision on the A66 cannot be taken separately from this process, and whatever has been claimed by other local politicians, I can assure him that the project has not been shelved. The spending review will support the development of our new long-term strategy for transport, developing a modern and integrated network with people at its heart. Within the north of England, the A66 link between the M6 at Penrith and the A1M at Scotch Corner is a key artery in our strategic road network, providing a vital east-west connection across the Pennines. It links ports on the east coast of England with north-west England, southern Scotland and ferry links to Northern Ireland. The nearest alternative east-west motorway is the M62, much further south, and looking northwards the M8 in Scotland. Today, the A66 between the M6 and the A1M is approximately 50 miles long, a mixture of single carriageways and dual carriageways. Approximately half of the route has already been dualled, leaving 6 sections of single carriageway to be upgraded. National Highways notes that collision rates on the single carriageway sections tend to be higher than on the dualled sections, and tragically, a number of lives have been lost on the route in recent years. More than 22% of the vehicles on the route are goods vehicles, which is approximately twice the average proportion of such vehicles on the strategic road network as a whole. And as my honourable friend knows, the A66 is a vital link for people living along the route, enabling them to reach shops, services and employment in nearby towns. For many living along the route, there is no alternative rail connection. Upgrading the TransPennine A66 would enable traffic to flow more quickly. The scheme would make the A66 a more viable option for freight operators as they move goods around the country, aiding economic growth. As my honourable friend noted, the economic case for the scheme could be improved if higher values for the freight value of time were included in the transport analysis guidance. We aim to do that in the future. However, I am pleased to be able to assure him that the economic assessment of this project for spending review deliberations included a sensitivity test to show the impacts of using higher values for freight values of time. Dualling the remaining sections would make the route more resilient when incidents do occur, as most collisions would be confined to one of the carriageways, allowing traffic on the other carriageway to pass, although of course we would prefer there to be no collisions at all. My final point on the A66 Northern TransPennine project itself is that National Highways estimates that this scheme could support the building of thousands of houses and support the creation of thousands of jobs as part of growth deals and local plans along the route. It could also support Carlisle's planned St Cuthbert's Garden Village, an ambitious proposal for 10,000 new homes and economic opportunities. Now, upon the conclusion of the spending review, the interim settlement is the framework for the £4.8 billion investment to National Highways for this current financial year. This investment includes more than £3 billion for capital enhancements, including the A66 Northern TransPennine scheme. This is a one-year settlement while we prepare to return to the road investment strategy settlements in a sustainable way. The A66 Northern TransPennine project, alongside other future road projects, is being considered as part of the spending review. Until that concludes, the Department is not in a position to make a judgment about individual schemes. But I can assure my honourable friend that my department is committed to putting transport at the heart of this mission-driven government. I am determined that we build the transport infrastructure to drive economic growth and opportunity in every part of the country, including the rural north. Finally, I congratulate him again for securing this debate. I thank him for his important contribution. I hope that he is reassured that the Department fully appreciates the importance of the proposal to his constituents and those of other constituencies along the route, and indeed the wider country, and that the scheme is being considered carefully. I thank him again for today's debate. Thank you.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many other opinions say aye. Aye. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order.